Omeed here with SaaS Buyers Club for episode 3, where we're going to be reviewing industry trends.
Joe here, your co-host with the SaaS Buyers Club. Why don't we get right to it? There's so many cool things going on in the SaaS industry now. Why don't you want to take it off for us, Omeed?
Yeah, clearly one of the trends that we're seeing in SaaS is AI. Generally, we're seeing a huge AI boom. In the deal review that we did, the conversational AI.
In the last episode,
last episode. That's right. And we saw, the conversational AI being important. The Klaviyo IPO incorporates AI and machine learning into its marketing automation. Case Text has incorporated AI, and that led to its acquisition. So we're seeing, these AI technologies and what are referred to as generative AI technologies kind of being at the forefront of the market. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so let's talk about this AI stuff. We can also talk about other trends, but this is key. And there's definitely some things we could provide some insight on there. One of the coolest things about the AI trend for me, so it's another one of those things I'll admit I made fun of for years, acknowledging a lot of amazing companies have been made for years. But right now we are past the tipping point. So there was a point where I made fun of them, overpromise, under-deliver. I'm going to make fun of you. I made fun of those companies for years, and we're at this tipping point now where it's like general AI is coming. A lot of these AI startups we're seeing in the market today, and that's a very broad general statement. A lot of them are super legitimate. What we're seeing now with conversational AI is merely emblematic of what's to come. We're going high speed from here. So from a SaaS market perspective and a business purchase perspective, like a buyer's perspective, any residual doubts one may have regarding, hey, like how bullshit are these companies? Obviously, you check them on a case-by-case basis, but you should be stepping forward if you're a buyer. You should no longer be in the realm of, oh man, there's so many bullshitters out there that are just have some crappy thing they're trying to pump up and sell, or they're hyping up, is what I'm saying. You should be, if you're not taking a keen dive and look as a SaaS buyer at AI generative AI startups. There's so many different types of any of them. Then you're not paying attention, and you're going to be left out like the .com boom. We're at that point now, and I say that with great confidence because I'm one of those guys who made fun of them for a while, and now I'm like, oh yeah, it's obvious. That's where we're at. A lot of buyers will agree with me there, but there are some points. I say that because there are some people out there who are still probably like I had been, sitting with some residual disinclination and or doubt that would hold them back from capturing the opportunities that are present in the market now. There's a lot of fucking idiots out there who don't know anything about the subject. Like one of my majors in university was philosophy of some logic, which is symbolic logic, which is the basis, the fundamental mathematical equations that underpin programming, in addition to philosophy of the mind, which is AI, which is the philosophy approach to AI. That's what I studied and got honors in at the University of Washington. I think the #1 computer science school in the world. I'm not blowing that one up. I actually think that's what it is. I can't remember. I know it's definitely top 5, top 10. It's, like Bill Gates literally has this huge endowment at the UW in Seattle, right? His house is like literally across the water from the UW. So I come at this perspective with with definitely, and I graduated 13 years ago from undergrad. So I'm definitely coming at this subject with some personal knowledge that's not just like hype boom, oh, I'm going to talk some crap about AI. I have a deep interest in the subject, very deep. And so that's a little bit of background about where I'm coming from on the subject. And again, yeah, buyers take a serious look at all the opportunities in front of us. Now, talking a little bit about the actual trends in the area. Well, what I could do is I could refer to one of my friends' generative AI businesses as representative of what's going on in the space. So this business is called Paramatters, just how you think you'd spell it. It was recently acquired. Not going to talk, I know the numbers, not going to talk numbers in case it's not public. The founder, Michael, the CTO and sole founder, utter genius. He's one of those early generative AI startups, built some crazy generative AI technology. He had worked in I'm going to get the name wrong, but I'm just going to say it because it's either what I'm about to say or it's very similar to. It's like Israel military. Yeah, I'll just say that. I was going to say defense forces or something. But so he, like a lot of top programmers out of Israel, works with Israel military. That's just kind of enunciating it. He's a genius and really good at what he does. In early generative AI startup, some of the key takeaways I want to point out here are, so Paramatters makes this really great software. Has to do with 3D CAD design and printing, particularly for example, companies like Boeing and or Ford. You know, BMW is one. They have several car makers that are their clients. One of them, BMW and Ford, I believe, are two of them. I haven't looked at his deal sheet recently. It's on his website, paramatters.com, I believe, and or Google Paramatters. And so, you know, they have these big companies that basically hard manufacture production of steel and other metals. And Michael, the founder, could explain it better than I can from a product perspective. But here's a generative AI business totally rewriting the playbook for the entire industry in what they do. And they were totally overlooked. Like he would talk to sure, they built up a great clientele, but I'm talking from a buyer perspective. You know, they were totally overlooked for years. I'm not going to get into details there, but it's kind of just one of those things where it sounded too cool. Like me as a tech person, I'm a lawyer, but I'm a tech person since I was a kid. And so from my perspective, it's always just been this mind-blowing technology. If you know when you see it, if you know what you're talking about, it kind of blows your mind. And people just overlooked it. It looks like alien technology when you see what the 3D or the generative 3D. They can like make tires or wheels, not tires. They can make car wheels that are just so much better than current car wheels. And you might be like, what? And it's like, yeah, it's an app that can just make car wheels that are way better by orders of magnitude than present car wheels, which is kind of like, really? And all they have to do is run some code, among other processes, right? So this company is very representative of all these really hotshot new generative AI technologies out there. Buyers overlook them. Somebody should have scooped up his business years before it was acquired for 10 times what it was acquired for. That's just how radical the technology is. And those are the kind of deals in the market today. You have to really get in and look at the actual technology. You have to look at the founder for his capabilities. If you don't know what you're doing, obviously that's a problem. So you have to, you work with somebody who knows what they're doing and analyzing this type of code and stuff in the markets. And go out and scout those deals and look at them. And if you're one of those founders, get more marketing out there about what your capabilities are. And so even what I'm trying to see here also is like, sure, he's built up a lot of revenue over the years. He should have been picked up before he even built up substantial revenue. That's how revolutionary the technology is. I'll throw it back to you, dude.
But I mean, at the same time, it's like, I hear you saying that he's been overlooked for quite some time because of the technology itself. But as we pointed out in the last episode, in episode 2, entrepreneurs never really have like clarity, or they oftentimes don't have clarity in terms of why a buyer is going to pick them up. It sounds like in his case, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but he got picked up after product market fit on the business side was proven, right? So
that's right.
yeah, so I think for a lot of founders, they have really great, especially technical, like engineering minded founders, they build great products. But it's not until they, of course, because a strategic or a buyer is going to want to make sure that the business makes sense. Because as we also pointed out on the last episode, you could have all these like fantastic features, but they may not actually bring the core value of the business to the business. So it sounds like for him, and you kind of confirm this, it sounds like he got picked up when product market fit was there, but had a savvy buyer been able to identify the technology prior to product market fit, they could have potentially got a great deal.
Yeah, they could have got a great deal, even if they had paid multiples over, I mean, like a lot more than what was paid for, which was a significant sum, by the way. It still would have been a great deal because the technology is so ridiculous. And again, go to paramatters.com. I don't believe it's a .org or .net, paramatters.com. And there's pictures of the technology on the front page. And it's just like, what? And so, and for me, that he is representative in my head and in my mind of this generative AI boom. There's a lot of great technology out there. People really don't know what they're looking at. Buyers should try to get in early. I know you have to prove a certain business case sometimes, or depending on what you're doing. In other words, the target needs to have met certain milestones, met certain criteria for the acquisition. Nonetheless, I mean, the longer you wait, the more pricey these businesses are going to become. The more other buyers are going to get in on it. Be more competitive. It's kind of like wait and you get a worse deal in the market right now.
Worse deal for the buyer, better deal for the seller.
We're still for the buyer I'm speaking to. Potentially a better deal for the seller. Maybe a better deal for the seller is selling right now. Maybe it is selling 2 years later after they prove certain criteria. That's definitely subjective determination.
Yeah. I think you're speaking to that kind of exit sweet spot that we talk about so often.
Yeah.
To exit at the right time.
Yeah, I am. Why don't you kind of talk to that a little bit from your perspective too?
The exit sweet spot it's essentially the idea that there is a right time to sell your business, and it could be before you expected to, or potentially later down the line than you expect to, because maybe the value of your business is greatest when you're doing your best, for example, and maybe the business will take a change of direction down the line and you should have sold maybe 2 years prior. Or it could be that you're already ready to exit, but the business isn't necessarily ready to exit, and so more work will be needed to be done on the business to actually drive the multiple higher so you can hit that sweet spot. So that sweet spot is like that perfect place in the journey of a business where it makes most sense for the owner or the founder of the business to exit the business, because that's where you're going to get the greatest value for your business.
Yeah, totally. And we can touch more in on that later. In regards to this subject, maybe we'll move on to another trend, but kind of just going on the AI trend a little bit, what I was just saying there a moment ago. I would encourage buyers to potentially look at different instruments per se, but different ways of acquiring stakes in some earlier stage generative AI and related startups, businesses generally. So it's not necessarily that you just need to obviously acquire the whole business. You could go out and take a minority stake in this slate of businesses that are targeting a specific vertical. You could go in and obtain, you could obtain some warrants or some other instruments that can give you exposure to those businesses and allow you then to get in at a better deal from an equity perspective a few years later, maybe after they've proven product market fit. So you give them a warrant, and then you can exercise that warrant. Obviously you can negotiate the exercise period, but so say 3 to 4 years later, the business has really just proven itself. The valuation's way up. You can exercise that warrant at a better valuation for the buyer. And from the seller's perspective, or in this case, the founder's perspective, not necessarily the seller's perspective, they have an interest in doing that too, because maybe they needed some capital at that earlier stage. So it's definitely a great time to sit back and rethink, okay, how can I get involved in these businesses? And if it requires you to approach it from, okay, what different instruments should I use perspective, this is a great time to take a step back and rethink your fundamental processes about SaaS acquisitions to get involved in those businesses. Because there's not many times where we run into basically a complete, in the tech space, this is the dot-com boom. Like, even from my own personal perspective, I'm like, man, like, I want to go talk to more of my AI startup founder buddies and see how we could service them. But that's not what we do. We're an M&A only, or 99% of what we do is M&A. So that's just how hot it is right now. It makes me want to go back and be like, oh man, how do I get exposure to these businesses? But it's not what I do. My main thing is obviously we run Optimist Legal, M&A, SaaS boutique firm. So yeah, that's another thing about the AI trend. It's such a big deal. I definitely, despite all the hype, I definitely feel like people are still underappreciating it.
I don't know if that's true, because where we're seeing a lot of VC capital move is towards these different AI startups. And so the bets
I meant from a buyer perspective, not from an investment perspective.
Yeah, doesn't it go along with your advice that you were giving in terms of, so we identified that VC capital is flowing into the AI market, and earlier you suggested that people obtain partial stakes in companies. So doesn't that align with the advice that you were giving in terms of we're seeing VC investors actually doing exactly what you were suggesting that that be done? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, a lot of people are putting a lot more money into like very specific aspects of AI, and they all have their own investment theses, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's definitely going on right now. I would still, I was referring earlier to buyers, like they need to be thinking more about it than they are today. And if you're a strategic and you have a strategic buyer and you have a big corporate development department, they need to be thinking more about it than they are today. And if you're a private equity buyer, you need to do some first principles rethinking about what you're doing, if possible, within where you're at in your fund and whatever you're doing, only within the realm of reason. And am I suggesting or advising? And this is not legal advice, by the way. Little lawyer disclaimer there. Am I saying that you need to reconsider your first principles and you need to take a step back and you think, okay, how am I getting in on this in a very reasonable fashion? I'm not saying like change your risk profile and stuff. People need to get more in on it. I'm saying from a buyer's perspective, this situation is totally underestimated. Now going on to VCs, I wasn't speaking to that earlier. I would go so far to say it's the same for VCs. Yeah, is there a lot of money going towards it? Yeah. But I'd say that a lot more money should be going towards it. We are seeing the refashioning of the global economy occur before our eyes. We just haven't seen it happen yet. It's kind of like the ball is midair and the bat's about to hit it. Or like I said earlier, we have passed the peak threshold when it comes to these AI startups. We're not at that point anymore where it's like, 30 years out. It's definitely 5-15 years out. We're going to be seeing the entire world continue to heavily transform. And I'm saying transform even more than we've seen up to now, which has been significant. There's been a lot of even enterprise AI companies. I'll say AI, but really in this case, I'm referring to, they have really complex algorithms and et cetera, et cetera. It's not general AI, obviously. There's obviously been a lot of movement so far. I'm saying we're at a different phase. Yeah, that's definitely the case. Like even legal, if it wasn't for, we talked a little bit yesterday, or in the last episode, I mean to say, we talked a little bit about legal SaaS and how that's going to completely reshape the industry. And if it wasn't for laws preventing non-lawyers from practicing law, 5-10 years later, so many small law firms would be out of business. But we have those laws protecting lawyers for the practice of law, so therefore it's a little bit different. And I can't say how that's going to play out because that's a regulatory issue. You, with your regulatory past, or let's say legislation passed, may have more insight on that subject. But we don't need to talk too much about legal SaaS. I don't want that to be. I want to talk about SaaS in general. Do you want to talk about another trend? I mean, we could go in on the AI trend. We could go in for days, but maybe we could touch on another trend next. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a really popular trend that we're especially seeing in the micro SaaS market is no code platforms. Have you heard of these no code platforms?
Oh yeah, I'm well aware.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of these companies popping up, a lot of activity in the no code space, just for the ease of use. Not only no code website builders, no code app builders, no code SaaS platform builders. And so I think that's a really hot market and industry to look at in the SaaS space right now. That's a trend to watch for sure, is these no code platforms. And actually one of our previous clients was in the business of snapping up these different no code platforms. So yeah, this is definitely a trend to watch in the industry.
Yeah. One of my clients last year was or is a no code website builder. They were not one of those AI prompt generated website builders which you see today. They would use, oh gosh, I forget. They used basically a different SaaS platform, and you could basically, it was kind of like Elementor and WordPress. You could basically build your website piece by piece, but it was basically, it was something very accessible for your average non-tech savvy, basic, let's say small business that wanted to make a presence or sell some goods or services online. And they were super successful. In this business, this prior client I'm referring to, super successful.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, the no code platforms are really actually just a springboard for product market fit. The no code platform is actually just like the entryway for the creation of this business that's going to go on. If it does well in the no code space, it's going to go on and it's going to continue to grow in that business itself. So the no code movement is almost a catalyst for business to progress in and of itself, and is going to be a facilitator for entry for so many businesses that may not otherwise have entered because of the barrier to entry that existed prior to these no code platforms.
Yeah, that's super insightful, and I wouldn't have mentioned it either if you hadn't brought it up. I think this is probably one of you can't say everything's so relative. One of the biggest trends I was going to say in SaaS. And here's a few things about it that come to mind to share. First of all, if you're a buyer of non no code SaaS businesses, in other words, other SaaS businesses, you need to look out, because here in the near and midterm, no code SaaS products are enabling non-technical people to pony up direct competitors to a business you might be thinking you can acquire, or currently looking to acquire, or basically your current investment thesis says, I want to acquire this type of business. Well, here shortly in the next few years, people are going to be able to replicate your business literally by telling an app to make it for them. Now, are we fully there yet right now? No. But are we well on our way to getting there? And is getting there totally like a questionable proposition? No. We are on our way to getting there, and it's not questionable whether that's going to be happening here in the near term. In other words, just a few nights ago, I was playing around with some no-code website builders. You get on there, I can't remember the names off the top of my head. You can just Google them. There's several of them there's like 2 that are like really good, but even those weren't like great. I would use it. I would like throw one together real quick if I wanted to. Like actually, I would use it even though it's not that great. However, I have the ability to make something that's better anyway. So it's not really. I'm not really a target customer, but basically you kind of say you give them 1 to 2 sentences is all you need to give it, and it will make you a whole website. It will generate some shit in there like customer reviews that you obviously need to go in and modify. So they're not really there yet. It'll make assumptions about your product and stuff, and the website won't have full features that you would expect if you were going to be selling a product. But it's a representative. It's like when you see it, you understand where the market's going. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, from what you were saying in terms of these no-code platforms are actually going to spring a number of competitors, I actually saw it from and I think this is the direction that you were going, and correct me if I'm wrong, but these no-code platforms can almost actually be deal flow generators for potential acquisitions. And that was actually one of the people I know. What they did, their strategy was they bought a no-code website platform for coaches.
Okay.
And what their idea was all of these coaches will go on this platform and create their websites on this platform, grow their coaching businesses, and then it's a perfect opportunity for the buyer of that no-code coaching platform to cherry pick the winners off of that platform that are doing really, really well and snap those businesses up and grow them. So it's a deal flow pipeline for him pretty much.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. Thinking about that from like a typical PE buyer's perspective, that may not be like something they do, but I'm just trying to say, like, I'm trying to actually think about how I could explain that same concept in the context of something that would be readily applicable to a PE buyer. And it's not really coming to mind. I think that's a great example of what's going on. I guess that's a strategy of its own, in other words. It's not something that might necessarily like evolve out of a typical PE buyer's current strategy, but that is definitely a strategy of its own. Like, hey, you could set up your own no-code platform that enables other people like within a specific industry, just what you said, specific industry to build stuff, and then you have first access to buy those businesses.
Totally. It's like an incubation it almost becomes an incubation platform. That's what it is. It's like, let's help you enter the market.
Yeah, why don't you know a lot about a lot of these acquisition websites, and some of them do this very thing. They like basically get their own deal flow. I think this is something that's very valuable for buyers and sellers to know about, and not everybody's super versed in it. Why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah.
So like some specific websites and like the same thing, you know a lot about it.
Yeah, the thing is, I think that a lot of people, despite, how kind of early these websites are, it's not like they've been around for that long of a time. It's not like they're dinosaurs that have been around for the last like 20 or 30 years. But I think the general sentiment to a great degree from most people in the space, especially for these websites, because the websites are like much lower market, and the websites we're talking about are, Biz Buy Sell, Flippa, acquire.com is really the one.
Micro
Acquire now rebranded as acquire.com.
Okay.
We're actually going to have a bunch of guests from that market specifically on our show. One of them, so you mentioned the platform Micro Acquire, which was for SaaS businesses, but one of our guests actually sold acquire.com to microacquire.com.
Oh, that's cool.
That facilitated the kind of move from being microacquire.com to acquire.com. So I'm super excited for that.
Are they moving up market from like micro SaaS to like larger SaaS deals?
That person specifically, I mean, when we have him on the show, it's going to be a really exciting conversation. I don't believe that right now they're moving markets because they found such great success in the micro market. And what we're actually seeing, I mean, it's important to address this because another one of our potential guests that we talked about, the stair stepping, right? So moving up from the lower market to the mid market, so on and so forth. And, that's
for like new buyers. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's a whole industry that actually is focusing on what is being called micro PE. So we're seeing, people playing and staying in that space.
I hear you there. I mean, I expect a lot of our audience to be more veteran PE players who, a $500,000 deal is literally a waste of time. But that doesn't mean it is a waste of time for everybody. There's certain strategies. Everybody has a different strategy is what I'm saying. And so, that's kind of what people understand, right? If you're buying a SaaS business for $500 million, you're just doing something completely different than buying one for $500,000. And our content is definitely going to be geared to providing valuable insights for both of those groups of people. So as a law firm, we definitely do focus on larger transactions. We can do smaller transactions though. Back in when I worked at big firms, we wouldn't even do a deal sub $100 million. We did a lot of supra $1 billion transactions. Similarly at our, in our SaaS law firm, we'll take on $250 million acquisition. Well, we're still at a point where, we'll totally talk to you, and we want to help people who are doing like micro ones, like 500K and stuff too. Definitely not our like focus though. We really want to be helpful to everybody in the SaaS M&A market though. That's kind of also one of the goals of this podcast is just get a lot of knowledge out there and build a community around buying SaaS businesses. So maybe we'll even be in the future connecting like people who are micro SaaS acquirers as they move up to acquire larger deals, get them involved in bigger deals, introduce different buyers, and really just kind of putting people together. I mean, that's definitely not, I guess I started off this by saying maybe we will, but it's totally actually been part of our plan and intention.
Maybe we will.
Yeah, but that's like totally has been part of our objectives here. Why don't you speak to that, like about how important it is to? I feel like there's so much opportunity for building a community around. We're kind of getting off the subject of these acquisition websites for a moment on a brief tangent, but why don't you talk a little bit about our goals with community and how it can just lead to so much more value for all buyers out there who are involved in it?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I mean the podcast is a well of knowledge and value that will attract both buyers, investors, investment bankers, founders, so on and so forth, to drink from the well. That's very much the vision of the podcast. But in bringing people to the well, there also is an opportunity for everyone to connect with one another, to support one another. That's, what community is all about. And even within that community, what we're hoping the intention of the podcast really will be is, an opportunity to connect with sellers, to connect sellers to buyers, to connect founders to the buyers, whether that be strategics or private equity, and connect the buyers, whether that be private equity or strategics, to sellers. By kind of bringing the community together and getting a lay of the land in that way, and through relationships. Most importantly, what I know both of us are super excited about for the podcast is the relationships that we're not only going to build with the guests that come onto the podcast, but also all of our listeners as well. And it's through those relationships that we can actually create great value. And that's definitely what I'm like really looking forward to in building this community and doing this podcast with you, Joe.
Yeah. No, I love that. Because there's so much. We're sure we're talking here about cool things, about trends, but on the back end, there's so much there's so much other intention and planning around all this content. Why don't we move on to another trend?
I'm good to move on to another trend. What's another trend that you wanna bring through?
Yeah, I mean, here's just kind of like a basic one that's going on in the industry is there's a lot of consolidation. In the earlier days, I mean, this is the paradigm of consolidation. So at the beginning, the industry was very fragmented, a lot of people making small different apps that offer various things, and then making more integrated apps with a lot of features. And then you have vertical SaaS, which is like Clio for law firms. And I don't, if you remember off the top of your head, we were just looking at a bunch of these companies. I don't remember all the verticals, but basically there's entire business management suites for various verticals. Like if you own an HVAC business or a construction business, there's a vertical SaaS just for construction management. So those vertical SaaS plays are completely integrated. All the services, or I say all, let's say the vast majority of services needed for a business in that target segment. So we've gone beyond the phase where just a lot of various features, like small features, to more feature complete apps. And now we're just seeing so much consolidation, a lot of acquisitions. Our buyers, conglomeratizing or consolidating, I mean to say, basically multiple apps that do, let's say, soft SaaS apps that do the same thing. So for example, one client right now, this is their business strategy and, obviously redacting any confidential information. They're targeting a very specific type of SaaS service that website owners use. In specific, if you own a WordPress website, you can subscribe to this service. Currently, we're representing them and buying the company that offers this service. Great service, great track record, growth moving forward, etc. And it is their entire plan. And what they are doing is I guess it's just the roll-up model, you could say. We do a lot of roll-ups. And so they're rolling up other businesses that do the exact same thing, or in some way they can strategically tack them on. This is pretty basic and classic. But we're seeing this happen so much more than you would have seen 10, 15 years ago. We're at a completely different level. We are rolling up. SaaS is a really great opportunity for consolidating and driving value out of consolidation. Obviously, there's also like big strategics wanting to consolidate competition to the extent permitted, amongst or amidst antitrust stuff. I mean, Supernatural. Let's say, here's an example, Meta just acquired Supernatural. It was a few months ago, it was this year. I can't remember when the transaction closed. I think the transaction was announced in January or February. And Supernatural is a AR, I guess is the way to put it, is an AR app where you do fitness. And it has various, basically modes where you can engage with the Meta controllers to do boxing, okay, or to swing, or to do squats and stuff, just various exercises you can do throughout the modes. Supernatural was a huge hit when it was announced. Meta snagged them up and strapped them straight onto. They're also offering that now, right? In addition to the Quest, the Meta Quest headset, which is the leading headset in the marketplace presently. And so that's, I guess you could call that consolidation. In fact, there was a antitrust review, or there was, let's just say there was some governmental reviews in relation to that, just because of the level of consolidation that occurred there. That's kind of an example. That was just something that was fresh in mind. So that comes to mind. So I mentioned that. But yeah, that's when you're at a mature state in a market, that's where consolidation becomes more prevalent, and then you have fewer and fewer service providers, right? And so that's definitely happening now. I don't got much else to say off the top of my head about that. Is there anything you want to add or any kind of lines of thought you want to take with that? It's kind of, basic.
Yeah,
So,
I mean
yeah.
the consolidation. Yeah, an interesting point there is actually, it's interesting to see a market moving in new direction and being consolidatable at the same time.
Oh, that is super interesting, right? Right. Usually you'd see like an aged industry where everything's been played out, margins are getting lower. Therefore, the way margins can be eked out even more is through conglomerates consolidating various product offerings, etc. Here, though, in SaaS, it's still like discovering new types of gold while the gold mines are consolidating. So yeah, I like that point. That is really interesting.
It's disruption almost on not disrupt. I mean, disruption is happening on the one level in terms of like the new markets that are opening up based on the new technologies, and then the old is kind of just being rolled up, and because of the fragmented nature of the industry, it's a ripe opportunity for that fragmentation to be capitalized on, and so we're seeing both kind of happening at the same time. Super interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And a really basic example of that, which I'm sure a lot of people are aware of, are like IT service providers for local or regional small to mid-sized businesses. This is something that has been traditionally, to a material extent, something that's rather fragmented. And right now, there's a lot of roll-ups. There has been for a while, a lot of roll-ups going around those local and regional service providers. And so, yeah, that's consolidation. There's an example on that. We could move on to discuss another trend. Maybe we could just touch on one more trend and call this episode.
LMS.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. That's a pretty big trend. Let's go ahead and talk about that, and then let's call it.
Cool.
So LMSs are like learning management systems. There's also another acronym that's used to commonly refer to them. It doesn't come directly or immediately to mind. And so these are very much so like basically SaaS businesses which provide software to educational institutions. And these are basically the classic service providers for your K-12 schools. This is just kind of this is the software, a lot of the software on the back end that you expect to see. And so this one's really cool because in around 2020, when the pandemic hit, the trend's still going now, but this trend boomed around 2020 when the pandemic hit. So before we had businesses like Khan Academy and a few other big businesses that offered a lot of online education. When 2020 hit and everybody realized how fragile school was and how awesome education can be online, and I do presently, as we sit here today, think that both have certain value. But nonetheless, at such time, people realize like, oh my gosh, like remote learning, it's huge. And so many different businesses started offering different learning LMS services to businesses like, basically online education businesses that were then offering even more various types of education services. So you've seen this blossom, like with all this type of coaching online. They use various LMS platforms. You've seen this blossom. So coaching, obviously a lot of like other type of online education platforms. So it ranges the full gamut, right? It ranges from whether you're getting like a new engineering degree online to a new like some sort of clinical medical degree and or other online certificate. And a lot of those certifications are no longer, your traditional types, which, are like, hey, your master's, your PhD, etc. A lot of them, and they even have value. A lot of people know this, but I'm just going to go over anyways. A lot of these certifications even have value for job seekers and just from a content-wise perspective that are in no way related with or similar to your average BS, Bachelor of Sciences, or BA, or again, Master's or PhD. They're just so very different. And so this space in 2020 really like totally transformed. There began being so much more demand for these services, so much more demand for various businesses which were utilizing LMS platform services. And online, we saw blossom basically a new revolution of online education, right? Now, with the return to school phenomenon is old as a concept, but now with that, we've sort of seen the market play through that huge boom cycle, but still nonetheless sustain a lot of the demand and interest in and value of these SaaS businesses and all the correlated businesses, these LMSs and correlated businesses. So it's just this huge booming space. To me, online education, LMSs, correlated businesses are still a huge area for growth, not just with continued growing demand over time, but in other words, as a trend, we're still on the dark side of the moon, really. Like people, even though there's been this big hype, people really haven't even seen the light of day for what online education and what these businesses are going to be doing in the next 5 to 15 years. You can kind of hear it ring true and resound when you think about the reflections of current K-12 students talk about how much better, in many cases, not in all cases, and I'm not saying in most either, in many cases, how many of them reflect upon the pandemic experience and how much better online education was, or how they could manage their own curriculum and go through content at a different pace, and amongst other, basically, other responses or other points of feedback on that experience that really underpins the value that those services have. So there's that. I'd say that's a huge trend, ongoing. Sure, it's a few years old in its big hype cycle, but again, we haven't seen the end of it. And I think that as we see generative content collide with online education LMSs, we're going to see a complete new phase of that market as well.
And we're likely going to see quite a bit of acquisitions in that space too, because the market has been maturing in that way, not just within the K-12 space, but I think alternative education, which we can actually even correlate to AI, the AI boom, because AI is, as it becomes more applicable, as it takes more precedence in society. One of the big scares was it's going to take your job. Well, how can you keep AI from taking your job? The way that you keep AI from taking your job is you become a better worker. How do you become a better worker? You invest in your education. You invest in certifications.
Yeah,
this is actually
100%.
This is one of the theses of one of the other people that we work with, which is his belief is, and actually generally there's another. So there's SaaS and then there's CaaS, KaaS, knowledge as a service. And these coaching businesses very much are CaaS. Or these certificate, if you take a coaching program and you get a certification, for example, that's knowledge as a service. And as we see AI kind of pushing people out of the workforce, in order to remain competitive, alternative education is going to become more and more important. And so these learning management softwares are, yes, just at the forefront. We're seeing so many of them: Teachable, Kajabi, so on and so forth. These kind of like other platforms for courses for alternative education, not only for K through 12. Great opportunity. Definitely a space to look at.
Yeah, no, 100%. And just to kind of tag along on that conversation a little bit more before we close out, one thing that's near and dear to my heart is homeschooling from a perspective of online education. I definitely think that we're going to see more businesses offering great homeschooling alternatives that are even better than they are currently, and that even make the homeschooling market even bigger over time, because there's just so much to offer. That homeschooling really changes significantly when you have generative AI teachers that know what your kid knows, know what his problems are, know how to talk to him, know how to repeat recent lessons with him, and basically are personal live PhD mathematicians and social studies graduate. That's not, what I'm saying. They're basically experts in each one of those basic classes that a K-12 student would go through. Like you have your physics class and your chemistry class and your biology class, and you can have a personal expert, which is just generative AI talking to you in each of those areas. And they know what you're interested in. They know how to carry a conversation with the kid. That would be, carrying on those lesson plans and that type of content. Man, I'm not sure if current K-12 can survive that as a product offering.
Yeah, I mean, there is an argument there, that the capability of AI obviously would have to fundamentally increase, because the whole kind of complaint about traditional K-12 schooling is that, teachers who are humans don't even have the capacity to to kind of attune to the needs of the child. So it would be interesting to see how generative AI will be able to do that, if generative AI obviously, being a program and so on and so forth, kind of lacking the attunement capabilities that a human would have. And one of the major complaints of K-12 educators is their inability to attune, whereas now we're kind of looking to AI like, hey, K-12 hasn't been able to do it, maybe you can.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. For something that complex, like again, getting more into like reading and interpreting emotions, which there's like sales software out there that you can have join you on your Zoom that will help read the emotions of let's say, the buyer of your product that you're selling.
Yes, I've seen it. It's a
Yeah,
sentiment
like
generator.
yeah, it'll be like they're excited or they're not disinterested. It'll basically talk about their emotions. So the ability currently of these, let's call them algorithms, or these SaaS products, to understand the emotions of people is still nascent. Nonetheless, heck, and again, going back to some of my knowledge base here, there may be a lot of types of emotions out there, but it's definitely a defined set. It's not infinite. And it's something that, these algorithms will definitely be able to ultimately perfect in the next 5 to 15 years easily. Now, that's just reading emotions, though, but now communicating and all the other human elements, what I'm trying to get at, are really complicated. So I don't want to say that, because basically we can't expect so many things from where we're standing at right now. I'm really agreeing with your position there, that we're not at that stage yet. But we're definitely heading in that direction. And let me tell you, like, my K-12 experience was actually really great. Like, I had public schooling and I had really wonderful teachers, only a few bad experiences. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people have shitty K-12 experiences, and therefore even a moderately good AI coach plus the parent can outdo that by orders of magnitude. So we really have to see what we're comparing here when we talk about, hey, is an AI education product. I know we got a little bit off LMSs there, but online education generally, is an AI product good? Well, what are we comparing it to? So that's a really interesting subject. I really like that subject. I'm excited to see those products come out in the future, and the sales of those businesses.
Yeah, I'm totally inspired actually to now look into AI teachers. I want to know more about that. I want to learn.
Yeah. It's something that like, so just a few nights ago, I was looking at like a top 100 list of AI apps, and on the list was mentioned some AI education stuff, but it was one of those things that was like, it's not as far along as, for example, the Dolly 2s of the world or the Mid Journeys, et cetera, which are the generative AI art apps, they're kind of like already there. If you want to say like, in the AI space, who's already ready there to destroy the marketplace and like are 95% there, it's those businesses. Definitely not like online AI teachers. We're not there yet with that. Yeah, that's a cool subject. I'm happy you flushed that one out and brought that one to attention. Well, with that in mind, why don't we go ahead and close out our episode here talking about some SaaS trends.
This is episode 3 of the SaaS Buyers Club, where we reviewed industry trends and we went on a few tangents as well. So if you're still joining us here at the end of the conversation, thanks for sticking with us. The purpose of these first 3 episodes was really just to give you guys, all of you out there, our audience, a little introduction to Joe and I. We release episodes every Friday for the next few weeks. This is going to be one of the last times you see just Joe and I chopping it up. For the next few weeks, we're gonna be interviewing leading SaaS thought leaders. So please subscribe, follow. Reach out to us if you have any questions. If you'd like to be a guest, reach out to us. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you guys next week. Thanks.